Why is it down?
Go keep going over Turtle.
Okay, so
We need to tell we like that.
oh, second. Okay, in terms of the stuff, deadlines remain unchangified. So exam 2, quizzes part 3, deadline today at 11:59 to 9 p.m. Exam 3, 4, quizzes part 4, December 7th, a day that shall live in infamy, end of day. For the paper, the emergency deadline remains November 21st, end of day. Turn it through Blackboard, and of course the desperation deadline, 50%, December 8th, remains as well. Before pressing on to part 4, personal identity, anything about previous stuff, stuff to be that needs more stuff. Now, personal identity, which we'll focus on, is one of the sort of core problems of metaphysics, and it involves two basic parts. One part is, what is it to be a person, as opposed to non-people? And of course, this has important implications outside of metaphysics. To talk about, we talked about the methodology of metaphysics, and one way to assess a theory is to see, in addition to what problems it solves that it's aimed to solve, what kind of fruit does it bear? What kind of extra things do you get? And one extra thing in personal identity is solving the metaphysics of it. You also get that person stuff, which has all kinds of implications in ethics. For example, there is here in our crazy state of Florida, I mean that with love, of course, is there was some years back the famous Terry Schiavo case, which is in a persistent vegetative state, and the question would it be morally okay to pull the plug or not, because you needed the machines to survive. And of course that connects to personal identity, because if the person is not there, the person is gone, then pulling the plug it's killing a living entity. But if the person is gone, like it's their soul or a fully functioning brain, then that wouldn't be murdering them, because they're gone. And it does, it also ties in the practical concern of, if someone's in a state like that, how long should you preserve them? Because if the person's still there, then maybe people do come out of comas and stuff years later. But if the person is truly gone, then it really wouldn't make practical sense to keep the body just alive just because we can. Now, of course, there are some clear cases, like if someone's head gets cut off and just head gets destroyed, you could keep the body alive. Just plug. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you just plug in. You just seal off the thing, put some wires into the nervous system, and just keep sending signals.
Without the brain?
Yeah, you could in theory. I mean, roaches, which are simple creatures, they can live. They can live until they die of starvation without their heads.
You serious?
Serious. With humans, we have a lot of complex stuff there, but in theory, the body could still keep going as long as you send the right signal. So you could put wires and stuff in.
Be a lot of wires.
Yeah, but it could be doable. But we'd be pretty sure the person would be gone. If someone was in a terrible accident, their head was destroyed, the doctor said, "Don't worry, we saved them." They go in, and there's that'd be like a Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt deal, because you'd say no, that the body's still there, but the person is they're gone.
Until they could rebuild their brain now.
Yeah, until they but yeah,
that would be a good story.
Unless they kept the brain. There's also, of course, at the beginning of life, one of the big moral debates and legal debates is the ethics of abortion. And so one key part of the question is, at what point does that entity, go, which is the initial one, so the zygote, does that become a person? Because killing people is generally bad. I mean, we still do it, war, capital punishment, etc., but it's generally bad. So if that entity, when that entity becomes a person, then it becomes very morally significant to kill that entity. It's important. And so part of the debate there is, when does the person actually come about? And of course, some say conception. And other people say, when you get your first car. that's the, General Motors' concept of personal identity. To be is to have your car. Yeah, so that end, in terms of the ethics, important. Now to get some, some sci-fi stuff in there, and we'll look at it in this section as well, there is the question of when do we have, artificial intelligence, robots, artificial beings, could they be people? Could they meet the conditions such that you could have a mechanical person?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, I might say, well, no, but that would just be bias on our part. We'd just say, well, it can't be a person because it's a machine, but that would just be, speciesism, saying, or, basically living organicism, where you say other things can't be people because they're not made out of meat and stuff. Yeah, so a big part of it ties to those ethical issues, end of life, beginning of life, and then determining what type of creatures are people or not, because of the ethics. Now, there's also the very practical concern of survival after death, because we saw a bit of this with Hume, immortality of the soul, and part of the question is, after death, can the entity that keeps on going, can that still be you? And this is one philosophical problem everyone gets an answer to, whether you keep on going after death, because we all get to die, and either it'll be like, hey, I'm still going, or you won't, in which case, I guess you'll not know in that case, because you'll be gone. Yeah, so personal identity involves the first part of the question, what is it to be a person? Which is super complicated. And so, of course, philosophers say, hey, that's super complicated, so let's make it even more complicated for extra degree of difficulty. Now, the second part is the identity. And that involves two questions. One is this question. What is it to be the same person across time? So what is it that makes you, you? And different people give different answers. We'll see in Locke, for example, he says that your memories make you, you. Other people say, like Descartes would say, it's your soul. I don't know why I always do this with the soul, like it's a matter or something. Makes you, you. The second part is, what is it that makes you distinct from everything else? In other words, the first part is, in virtue of what are you, you? And then the second part of the question is, in virtue of what are you not everything else? What makes you different, gives you that distinction from everything else. Now, of course, there's the metaphysical question and the epistemic questions. The epistemic questions are, how do you recognize people, or how do you know? And the metaphysical question is, what actually is it to be you, distinct from all other things? Now, the first dead person we're looking at for this is our good dead friend, John Locke. Born in 1632, died in 1704, and is still dead today. Now, he went to, I believe, Oxford, and was one of those sort of a troubled spirit, not in the sense that he had all kinds of angst issues, but very sort of discontent. Always was not satisfied with the answers given. And at the university, he wasn't content with what they were offering, and so he read stuff, on his own, specifically Descartes. It kind of revolutionized his views. Because during the time people like Locke and Descartes and Hobbes were doing their stuff, philosophy had kind of settled into dogmatism. You just say, well, the church says this, Aristotle, says this, the authorities say that. Those are all the answers. And so it wasn't very innovative. And then Hobbes and Locke and Descartes came along and said it's time to, sweep everything aside and have a revolution. And then, of course, as always happens, they became the status quo. So people just say, Locke says this, Descartes says that, and then you end up in academics. If you go into professional academics, most of what you do is writing about what other people said about stuff, and then you say you add just like a little bit of your own onto it, just not too much though. So I remember I did my dissertation, and basically said what you do is you spend a big chunk of it reviewing all the problems, the history, presenting all these other views, and then you add just a little bit of your own. And then that's kind of how it goes. Which means we're probably due for a big revolution in philosophy. Fortunately, they're rarely involved.
So you're gonna be the one that do the revolution?
Oh, I've already done it. The revolution will be YouTubed. It won't be televised, but it will be YouTubed. Now, he was also, in addition to his philosophizing and revolutionizing, he was involved in various public activities. He was a doctor to one of the British nobility, and he helped draft the constitutions for the Carolinas, North, South, East, and West Carolinas. It used to be 4, but we don't speak of what happened the other 2. Terrible accident. Sorry about that. Now, in terms of his political motivations, which we'll talk about, he was, of course, inspired by the English Revolution, where the Brits were deciding whether they're going to have a Catholic absolute monarch with a weak parliament, or have a Protestant monarch with a strong parliament. So what happened?
I don't really know.
Yeah, Protestants and strong parliament, plus corgis. So the monarchy now is basically just pretty much a figurehead. They just get crap tons of money, and then they, marry Americans. I guess that's where they do that. But I guess they really, like having that type of stuff. But as an American, thought revolutions don't have to pay attention to that crap, so I never do. People say, watch that. I'm like, I'm American. I'm not watching that. I like the corgis. They're pretty cute. I like Doctor Who, but no.
You like Doctor Who?
It's a great show. All the way back to '63. Predates me. You just got to keep watching it till you enjoy it. Now, he wrote a lot of stuff before he died. His big tour de force in government is the 2 treatises on government published in 1690. And this is super important for political philosophy because pretty much like all political philosophy underlying the United States and Western democracy is laid out in Locke's, some other things like Rousseau, but Locke is kind of the big thinker here. Things like life, liberty, property, no taxation or representation, build the wall, make America great again. The wall's not America.
Make America great again.
We need greatness. His second big work, in which he does his Metaphysics and Epistemology, is an essay concerning human understanding, in which he lays out metaphysics and epistemology. So either one of these would have been enough to ensure his lasting fame, but he's got double fame. So he's kind of a, all-around thinking guy. He also wrote some other stuff, letters concerning toleration, arguing for religious tolerance of Christians, some thoughts concerning education, and the reasonableness of Christianity, because he was a devout Christian. And then, of course, he got old, and then he died, and he's still dead today. Now, when Locke is locking, he reluctantly embraces, or rather, it's kind of like that awkward hug with a relative. You don't really want to hug them, but you don't want to be like not hugging them because they're like your family. You gotta hug family, even though it causes deep psychosis or something. And so he's kind of like that. He's like, awkward hug. So why the awkward hug? Well, substance, as we saw before, the idea is that it's the stuff in which properties are stuck. It like supports them and holds them up. Now, to use a bad metaphor, it's like the bread on which you put it's like an open-faced sandwich. You get the bread, you put the meat on. Because if you don't have the bread, you don't have a sandwich. You just have meats or cheese or whatever. Now, the argument is, as to why people accept this, is the idea is that qualities, properties, can exist, to use Latin, sine res substante, basically without something supporting it. And the argument for it is actually pretty decent, which is this. If we take like this jacket, it's got various properties. It's got some blue, some grayish, and it's got shape, density, mass, and volume. But of course, we can't I can't pull away the blue. I can't pull away the gray. I can't pull away the mass. Anytime we encounter something, we never encounter free-floating properties. So you run into blue, you'll run into a blue jacket. You run into gray, you'll run into a gray jacket. You run into jacket shape, you'll run into jacket. the shape. And so the reasoning is, since we never encounter qualities just kind of free roaming on their own, they've obviously got to be like in something, stuck to something. And during this time, the idea was, well, it's got to be a substance. Now later thinkers, right after Locke, this guy who saw Hume, and we'll see Hume's view of this in the future, took the view that you don't need a substance, you just have to have some reason why all the qualities are really stuck together, why they're not like free roaming on their own. But the problem with free roaming is something that's got to be settled. You got to explain why you find stuff just drifting on its own. So Locke says, substance. It's kind of like when if you were in high school and they had this one friend who was a car, but they're not really your friend, you're just friends with them because of their car. It's that kind of scenario. Now, what is this substance? Well, Locke kind of jokingly, humorously presents his elephant story. And he got it from, it's actually part of mythology, or if it's true, then realology. And the idea is this. Back when people didn't have like physics, modern physics, there was an excellent question. What holds up the Earth? Why doesn't it like fall? Which is a pretty good question. And the answer is we are constantly falling. We're just not hitting.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, in a way we're moving. The Earth is.
I mean, it's moving, but when you to fall, it's come downward.
Yeah. Well, every direction in infinite universe, every direction is down or up. So yeah, the Earth itself, in addition to rotating, we're also moving away from other. We're moving closer to some galaxies and further from others. The universe is expanding. Yeah. So we're rotating. We're going around the sun, and we're also the whole solar system and galaxy is also moving.
But still, that's not falling.
Yeah, technically, yes, we're not hitting anything. So I guess we're technically not falling because there's nothing. Well,
I mean, to rotate around is to do this.
yeah.
But to fall is to do this.
Yeah, you're falling toward. You have to fall towards.
I mean, even if I'm falling towards nothing, I'm still falling if I'm coming down a downward motion, right?
Yeah, maybe we are falling down. Maybe that's down in the universe.
Okay.
So we could be falling. Yeah. Or we're rising. I guess it depends on whether you're positive, we're all rising together, or negative, we're all falling down. So yeah, I guess it depends on half full, half empty, falling or rising. Oh, maybe a new thing. Optimists say we're rising, pessimists say we're falling. Realists say get back to work, I guess. Speaking of which. So what's holding up the Earth according to this story? And again, Locke doesn't think it's true, but he likes the story. So what holds up the Earth is a big elephant is holding up the Earth. You can probably still find them. I remember when I was in college, the posters were fairly popular. The Earth with the elephant and standing on the turtle for some reason, as well as like various blacklight photos and smoking lots of marijuana. That was a popular thing. Probably, I assume it still is a thing today. Probably the blacklight posters, not so much though. You would look on that. So the elephant's holding up the Earth, and then the question is, so what's the elephant standing on? And the answer is a big tortoise. Big turtle. Although they're separate, tortoises and turtles. So what's the tortoise standing on? And in the story, it's something I know not what. There's got to be something holding it up, but we don't know what it is. I guess we can't see that far down. And so Locke says, substance is that. It's holding up the qualities, but it's something we don't know what. So he's saying, epistemically, we don't know what it is. Now, this is also a classic objection against substance, which is this. If you suppose we're able to pull away all the properties of this, the blue, the gray, the mass, the density, the volume, every quality, what would be left on the desk? Yeah, nothing. And so empiricists argued, well, there is nothing under the qualities. There's nothing, it has no qualities, it's nothing. And so kind of the classic argument against substance is it has no qualities, so we have no empirical reason to believe that it exists. Now Locke didn't, here doesn't accept that argument, so it's like, we have no idea of it, it's something we don't know what. And so he just kind of reluctantly accepts it. Now again, later thinkers, when we see David Hume, he explicitly says, "Ew, none of that stuff." So reluctantly, he accepts substance. Now, having read Descartes, he's familiar with the idea that there's two types of substance in Descartes' view: material, and then the ghosty stuff. I'll do the usual, the ghosty stuff, like it's a volleyball or something. So, two types of substance. Now, Locke, in a way, has sort of a interesting argument here. He basically says, yeah, if you accept material substance, you might also accept the mental substance, because if you're going to go crazy, you might also just go, full on. It's kind of the argument of, if you're doing something stupid, you might also do something more, something equally stupid, because why not? Yeah. So, he does say we don't have a good idea of any of this stuff, of substance in general in particular, but hey, why not? Let's just accept this reluctantly. So his metaphysics at this point, he's got substance. So you've got physical substance, and then you've got immaterial substance, the shell, the ghost. Now, but his mission here, again, is to get to personal identity. What is it to be a person? What is it to be the same person across time, distinct from all other stuff? Now, he begins with something simpler, which is a good approach. If you like a really difficult problem, you want to find problems that kind of lead up to it that are easier to address, which may help you sort things out. And also Locke noted that we throw around terms like same man or woman, not to be sexist, and same person, and we throw those terms around, and same soul, same body, but he's trying to figure out, like, what do those all mean, what do those all refer to? So it begins with kind of the easiest of the hard stuff, namely, what is it to be the same living creature, like same tree, or same squirrel? Because in this case, you don't have to bring in being the person part, because that's like a whole other, whole other bucket of worms, to start off like with trees and trees and animals. Now the first thing he considers is kind of an intuitive approach, which initially makes sense, but really falls apart quickly. If we take the tree out there, we might say, well, what makes that the same tree that was here Wednesday, or here 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, however old that tree is? Well, one plausible answer is same matter. Same matter, same tree. Or same matter, same squirrel. Now Locke, of course, points out a clear problem with this. Intuitively, we know that the matter in a living creature changes constantly. Like in our own case, we can see it happen. Like when we eat, and you get, we're constantly shedding hair, we're losing skin cells, we're growing new ones, and when you see trees, like when they're like in the fall, they drop their leaves if they're seasonal that way, and we see things growing, etc., and decaying. And so that would mean if we made same matter, same entity, as Heraclitus said, it would never be the same tree twice. We'd never be the same person twice. Because every time something changed, like a hair falls out, or you grow new hair starts growing, you wouldn't be the same entity. But of course, if we said,
if the hair fall out and the new hair grows, you're not the same entity.
If you think that you have to be, identical matter, like you have to be physically identical, if that personal identity was identity of matter is identity of living creature, then the same creature would never be the same creature. The slightest change, you lose a hair, no, I'm not the same, animal. Or if you pulled a leaf off a tree, it's not, on one end the tree is different, but we still think it's the same tree. Likewise, if you lose a hair, you don't think you're a different person, you think you just lost a hair. So Locke says, identity for living creatures can't be sameness of matter. So, and then of course extending from this, being the same person is not going to be being the same matter. So what is it to be the same living creature, same plant or same animal? Well, what he ends up saying is this. It's a bit vague. He does, accept that the body of a plant or animal is made up of matter. And he uses kind of, I would say, like a river metaphor. The matter is constantly flowing through, changing, but he says it's the life that unifies it. So being the same tree means a flow, that matter united by that life. And with an animal, it's that flow of matter united by that life. He doesn't go into detail.
Okay, it's the flow of life that makes you essentially.
Oh, makes the, well, he's not a personal entity yet. What makes, to be the same animal, like the same dog or rat or same plant, would be the same life, same plant, regardless, even if the matter is completely different. Because if you have a plant, or even an animal, eventually, if it lives long enough, everything will be replaced in it, pretty much. Especially with plants, they can completely, none of the original stuff will be left. But we'd say, well, it still seems to be the same, do it with the same plant. Like when someone says, oh, I've had that plant, for 10 years, and the matter is different. But to make sense of that, we'd say, yeah, it's not the same matter, it's the same living creature. So he says, same plant or same animal is the same life, the same living creature. Now, unfortunately, he doesn't go into detail like what it is to be the same life, but that's what he claims. Now, then, since we're not super concerned with being the same plant or the same animal, our main concern is with us, he then goes from that to being the same man or same human, not to be sexist. Now you may, at this point you may say, well, why not say, to avoid being sexist, why not say person instead of man/woman or human? Well, the reason is this. Locke does not believe, or did not believe because he's dead, that human is equal to person.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's not saying that humans aren't people, but he's saying they're not identical. I mean, for example, we would say that dogs are animals, but we would not say that dog equals animal, because that would mean that all dogs are animals, which is true, but also mean that all animals are dogs.
But all persons are human, and all humans are people.
Well, Locke thinks otherwise. I mean, true, as far as we know, as far as we believe, all the people we've met are human, and all the humans we've met are people. But Locke considers, he wants to consider all possibilities, but they're not, being the same human is not the same thing as being the same person. Or so he claims. Now, we don't have to agree with him just because he's super dead. But his claim is they're not the same thing. So, what is it to be the same human? Well, he thinks in this case, being human, being the same human is being the same animal. Because he's looking at human as the biological entity as opposed to the metaphysical, the person. So just like with animals and plants, it's a organized living body. And then he considers the obvious thing about the soul. People bring in the soul. And so what if someone says, well, being the same human means having the same soul? So here's the soul. And so the way you track the human is by tracking the same soul. So the soul makes that entity human. Now Locke argues against that. He says the soul, to use the metaphor, the soul does not make the human. Why not? Well, here's how he reasons. Suppose you have a pig, and somehow, either with super mad science or or magic, imagine you had like a soul tracker. You had like a Harry Potter spell, tracking soul and trackster. Or you had like a soul scanner. And you're, going to, suppose you get like a crazy friend who's like a wizard or mad science. And they say, hey, guess what? And you're like, what? It says, he holds up like a magical lens and shows, and holds it over a pig and says, look, that pig's got the soul that was once in the body of a human. Now in that case, would you say, that pig is a human? No, you'd say, weird, that pig's got a soul that was formerly in a human. So Locke argues that because of that, we don't think that the soul makes something human, because human is a biological identity, not a soul thing. Now again, people could argue against this. Someone could say, well, your soul is human, and whatever it happens to later get into, then it's still human. But then of course, what if you started off, I guess if you believe in reincarnation, it started off as like a squirrel, you'd always be a squirrel. Once a squirrel, always a squirrel. So he says, same substance, not the same thing as same person or same human, even though people often kind of squish them together. And again, just because Locke is super famous and super dead, doesn't mean he's right, because everything he claims, there are other people who disagree with it. So then, what's his final answer as to what it is to be a human? Well, he gives a biological definition. Namely, it is being an animal with a certain form. Now, if Locke was around today, he'd be super old, but if he was around today, he'd probably be talking about, the physiology, probably bringing genetics, saying it's an animal with a certain genetic code, certain configuration, and that would be, biological definition. That is what it is biologically. The definition biologists use to identify, Homo sapiens. Now, here he takes a shot at Aristotle, although he doesn't mention Aristotle by name, because back then people didn't really footnote or endnote very well, because they were revolutionaries. Now, he then argues that Aristotle was wrong. Now, Aristotle said famously that humans, are the rational animals. So that was his definition. Human equals rational animal. Now again, when you have an equal sign, that means it goes both ways. So if something's human, it's rational. If something it's rational, it's human. If they're the same thing. Now, Locke argues against this, and he asks us to imagine, a scenario in which a cat, or parrot was reasoning. For example, suppose on Monday, class time rolls around, not here, you're scratching at the door. You're like, what is that? You open the door and look down, and you see a cat, there with a backpack on, glasses, smartphone. It says, meow, thank you.
Professor done went to charge of the cat.
And the cat comes in, hops over the desk and says, meow. And says, hi there, I'm Renee Descats. I'll be your professor today. Meow. And then, it hits the thing and starts talking about, personal identity. Now in that case, we wouldn't say, wow, that cat's a human. We'd say, wow, that cat is pretty smart. It's pretty crazy. Now Locke's not saying there really are cats that talk, but if a cat was walking around talking, think of like Garfield, for example, we wouldn't say that cat is human. We'd say the cat is smart, the rational cat. So Locke thinks, he's not saying that that's something that could happen, but he's saying that if it did happen, we wouldn't say that that entity was human. We would say it was a cat. So his claim is rational animals, not the same thing as human. Humans, there are humans that are rational animals, there are rational animals that are human, but not all rational animals are humans, or so he claims. So for him, being human again, he didn't know about genetics, etc. It's having a particular form. Today, he'd probably say it's particular about, you know, genetic identity, blah, blah, blah. And so that's what it is to be the same human. Now, this is the kind of thing that to use like, well, forensic sciences, to identify, you know, for police investigations, they're looking for the same human. So they're checking for, you know, DNA, you know, fingerprints, pictures. Likewise, like when they have disasters, they get the dental records to identify people. Which can be a problem because in some disasters, we had this on radio this morning, in some disasters, they lose the dental records. And so they, you know, people are, it remains, but they don't have the dental records because they burned up or got flooded too. It happened during Katrina. They lost a lot of dental records for people. So I guess the thing is, if you live in a place that's dangerous, like Earth, always have your dental records saved somewhere in case someone, you have to be identified to plan ahead.
But it'd be a change. Just like when I was coming to school, I was going to get my immunization records. And you think Florida has them?
Probably not. Well, they were paper, you know. It's like my, well, your birth certificate is probably the same thing. Mine's like a little piece.
Card.
Yeah, it's a little piece of paper, you know, with a stamp, with a stamp from the city. Super.
That's what I'm saying. You would think that the health department would have those, but they don't. They, after so many years, they discard them.
Oh yeah, because it's too much paper.
So I'm like, so I don't exist.
You know, sometimes that can be good. You're the man that doesn't exist. If you're a, you know, man of mystery. So his view is same human means, you know, it'd be that same living critter. So again, this would be biological identity. I think the kind of practical thing that, you know, police or, you know, forensic examiners would use. But his ultimate goal is, again, it's not what is it to be the same human, but what is it is to be the same person. So he's going to answer again those key questions. What is it to be a person? What is it to be the same person across time? And what is it that makes you distinct from all this stuff?
Okay, how he relate the cross time thing?
Oh, because the across time thing is that personal identity is supposed to, like, here's you now, and then there's somebody back, like in, you know, first grade with your same name, same social security number, you know, and the question is that actually you? And intuitively say, yeah, of course. And so that would, and then of course, we think that off in the future, even if it's only like 4 minutes from now, that you'll still be going. So the question is, what ties all these together such that come Friday, if you get paid on a Friday, come Friday, that person is entitled to the paycheck for the work that those past entities did.
So they won't pay 3 people.
Yeah. Now, of course, the paychecks, we go by the same human, typically, because you don't get like a metaphysical, unless you work in a pretty strange place, they don't have like a metaphysical scanner to say, yep, same person. So what's his definition of person? Well, here's how he defines it. You gotta meet the following qualifications. 1, gotta be a thinking, intelligent being that has, and 2, that has reason and reflection, and 3, can consider itself as itself the same thinking thing in different times and places. Now, good question, of course, is that reasonable? Now, a perfect definition of anything, in this case person, would give you both the necessary and sufficient conditions. You have a logic class in the summer, so you probably, it's in every logic class. But the sufficient condition for something is, in a definition, if it has those qualities, then it is that. So if you had a sufficient definition of a person, if something had, or someone rather, had those qualities, then they must be a person. The necessary condition is, if something doesn't have those qualities, then it's not a person. And if you've got both necessary and sufficient, That means if you have them, you are a person, and if you don't get them, you aren't a person, so both of them together. It's a perfect definition. Everything that meets those conditions is that thing, and everything that doesn't isn't that thing. And philosophy, in many ways, more crudely put, is a quest for perfect definitions, for things like justice and person. So the question would be, is this the perfect definition? If you get those things, are you then a person? If you don't get them, then you're not a person. Well, do people gotta think? Not all the time, but at least be thinking and intelligent. And by intelligent, it doesn't mean like, genius. It just means having like a non-zero intelligence. Oh yeah, I mean, it's kind of how we separate people from like plants and, squirrels and stuff, is that they think, and they have reason and reflection. But then again, to argue against Locke, as far as I know, the zygote doesn't think, doesn't have reason and reflection. In fact, a case could be made that if you go by, say, like scanning brain waves, it's a long time before you get any mental brain activity at all. And there's still the question of at what point an entity actually does start thinking, and starts having reason and reflection. I mean, many of the medieval and ancient thinkers, Augustine and Aquinas, for example, thought babies were basically animals in a way, in terms of like, because they didn't reason, they didn't talk or reason. And in a way, it kind of makes sense, because like at first
you said it was real people that found.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't think babies should be like, treated as animals, but in terms of because again, they're influenced by Aristotle. Humans are rational, babies are not, babies are basically animals. And so we see in Augustine that view. At first as a living thing, then it develops into an animal, then eventually becomes a human, a person.
They should have kicked him out of school, that?
Augustine? Got to be a saint. Got to be a saint. Yeah, the worry about abortion is actually fairly recent.
Say that again.
The moral obsession with abortion is fairly recent, within our lifetime.
Yeah.
It goes back to the 70s.
Yeah,
So, yeah, if you believe that life begins, person begins at conception, you would have to reject either two options. One, you'd have to reject this and say it's something else, or you'd have to say that, that entity, that single cell, has this stuff somehow.
I mean, it does have it, it's just not coming into play at the time.
Well, yeah, but you could argue, if you were a dualist, you would say that, and you believe in the soul, which is, that's what, religions, Catholicism, etc. believe, you would have the zygote, and then, I guess as soon as that happens, you would have, like, a soul attached to it. I mean, Clarence Darrow addressed this point, and he said, well, when does that happen? What point does that occur? Is it that you have the egg and the sperm fertilizes it, and then there's like a soul kind of waiting, like, okay, come on. Okay, time to go. And the soul hops in there. When does that happen? Now, the fact that Darrow kind of makes fun of it doesn't prove it's not true. Maybe that's.
Because we're still making fun of Darwin, so that.
Yeah. So maybe that is what happens. As soon as you get fertilization, boom, you've got the soul gets connected to it, boom, you got a person. Which is not, if you believe in the soul, that's no more silly than believing in the soul. Saying that's how it happens. That it connects, that zygote time is no more certain than it connects later on. Yeah, so if you believe the person is a soul, it can evolve that stuff in there, but as you said, it's going to be a long time before that's ready to.
It's called development.
Yeah.
I mean, this glove is this glove. I mean, it was a glove once they made it. I mean, it was not no after point. It was a glove once they put it all together. It was a glove in. a human being is a human being from conception. I mean, it's just developed, it's got to develop into, it's just like if it was a little child standing there, if it was a boy, it's still a man, it's just
a little man.
yeah, because, I mean, there's no, then you come and you change into the man, it's just that a point of growth and development.
If you go with Aristotle, you could say all the potential's in there.
Yeah.
Now, of course, someone could argue against that, saying, well...
Well, they do, but I'm just saying,
yeah,
it's just...
that the glove, true, when a glove is made as a glove, it's fully formed, but if you had just a pile of, glove material...
And everything in it is the potential is there. They just got to put it together.
Yeah, but then you'd say it's not a glove until you actually put it all together.
Well, and that's what I'm talking about, the seed. When it meets the egg at conception, it's whatever it is. If it's a girl, it's a girl. If it's a boy, it's a boy. But it's the man ungrown, or the woman ungrown.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can make that case. Yeah, you go into the metaphysics of the soul, you could say all the stuff is already there, it's just waiting.
Yeah, it's just that it had not developed.
Yeah. Or you could go, there's also the potential argument that it's not yet, say, architect or a roofer or a doctor, but then someday it would be that.
Say that again.
Well, because if a thing is what it is, has all its potential in it, then the zygote, if the zygote grows up to be a doctor, then it's Dr. Zygote.
Technically, you're right.
Yeah, and so if you take that view, the consistent way, you could say, yeah, it is, I mean, Leibniz would take that view, it's all in the monad, so everything that's going to be is already
yeah,
there.
everything is just, when you shape it, it takes the form that it's going to actually be. But it's still already there, it's not mature to that point to walk in that way.
Yeah,
I mean, just like a child, a baby, it's going to walk eventually, but now it's crawling. It's learning to do those things that it's going to eventually do. Unless something or someone cripples it, that it won't perform in the way it's going to perform, but it has still had that potential until it was crippled.
Yeah. Yeah, so you could make the argument that a person, I mean, a couple options. One is, that people sometimes do, is they'll say that it is a person, and then it's just a matter of, because of the soul, etc., just a matter of development. And some people will argue that it's not a person now, but it's a potential person, so that it will, so it's not like the zygote is not actually a doctor now, so you wouldn't call it Dr. Zygote, but it's potentially a doctor.
Yeah.
Likewise, it's not yet a person, but it's potentially a person. And people can make that their argument. Yeah, so given Locke's view, if you want to say a zygote is a person, you have to say either it's got those qualities, you just can't detect them, or that being a person is something other than having those qualities now, which are both viable options. And similarly, if you take, at the end of life, if you take someone who's, persistent vegetative state, the question would be, well, take an extreme example. So someone gets their head chopped off, head's destroyed, and they keep the body alive. Well, is that still a person?
It's a dead person.
Well, the body's still going, head's going.
Yeah, but it's alive because of you having something to sustain it.
Yeah, but a person on life support, if you get badly injured, you're on.
But again, on life support, you still have your head, which causes the body to function, right?
Yeah,
but if you take the head out and put something else there to keep it alive, the body itself is not alive.
No, it's still alive.
You just causing it to
stay alive.
But it will never function again unless you learn how to rebuild a head.
Yeah. Which they're trying to do. Yeah.
Okay, but that's the whole point. They're trying to do that, but it's not. So the body itself is not alive. It's just being sustained.
But let's imagine like a horrifying sci-fi scenario where if there's somebody who's like troublesome and you got like an oppressive government, they try, and their body's still perfectly useful, so they just decapitate them and destroy the head,
And create another.
and put like a robot head on it, and just, so that way the perfectly good body is like working in an Amazon warehouse, driven around by the robot, because all it has to do is, go around, pick up packages and stuff. Would that still be a person? Because the body's still alive, but it doesn't think, it doesn't think or reason or reflect, but it's still biologically
Mutated.
Well, Locke would say no, because,
I have to agree with Locke.
it's not reason or reflecting. Now, we'll close on this bit of the definition. Now, one question we'll see in the future is an epistemic question, actually we'll see it now, is the question of how would you tell if something is a person? There's a metaphysical question, what is it to be a person? There's the epistemic question of how do you know? And Locke, in a way here, kind of suggests a potential test. I mean, you would say, does it think, does it reason? And this self-identity, during the 70s, back in the 70s, a psychologist came up with a way to kind of test this, which is, how do you tell if something's self-aware, like aware of itself? And one sort of empirical test is the mirror test. What you do is, if you have a baby, and you take like a paintbrush and, put a glob of paint on the baby's head, then hold a mirror in front of them, what's baby gonna do?
Say that again.
So you suppose you have a kid,
Uh-huh.
infant, like a year or two, like 2 years old. You take a paintbrush, put a little glob of paint, non-toxic, and put it on the baby's, forehead, and then you hold the mirror up to the baby. What's the baby do?
Scream.
Yeah, of course, scream. Scream's going up screams. But what would they do? They see the mark on the thing, that then what do they do? Well, what do you do if you see paint on
You're
your head?
gonna do this, yeah.
Yeah, because that's you.
Yeah.
You recognize yourself. Which seems simple, but if you take a mirror and hold it up to like a parakeet or a spider or a dog, what
They
do
gonna
do?
pick it.
Yeah, they'll think it's,
That gets them.
yeah, they'll think it's another animal. So that's a kind of interesting test, because we can recognize our self. We have a concept of self.
So,
And it's not a perfect test, but it's kind of an interesting way you can test it. So one sort of way to test, does this being have, kind of pretty good cognitive abilities, is that test.
use the mirror.
Yeah, because humans can pass it, elephants can pass it, apparently dolphins can pass it. There's a gray parrot who can pass it. I think chimpanzees and apes can pass it. Dogs typically no.
The dogs would normally look at it and bark at it, so I think that would be passing it, wouldn't it?
Well, they don't think it's them though, because if you put a mark on a dog, maybe they just don't care. They're just like, I don't care. So it could be the dogs just don't care, like, about having stuff, paint or something on them.
Because they play in the dirt anyway, so.
That's true. They're dirty beasts. Okay, so that brings in into the stuff for today. For time has ended. So have a good weekend, and I'll see you on the Monday.
After Thanksgiving.
Oh no, we still.
Oh, Monday.